Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this, the 23rd February 2024. Jummah Mubarak. May you all have a very blessed Friday. And today I would like to read from this wonderful book, which I've read from before, The Path of Peace by Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah, subtitled A Vision for a Peaceful World. And this is a collection of some of the Shaykh's speeches. And I'm going to read from page 35 of the book today, which is inside a larger chapter called In Pursuit of Peace. And this section is called Declarations of Apostasy and Fatwas as Causes of Tribulation. Declarations of Apostasy and Fatwas as Causes of Tribulation. Two factors in particular lead to tribulation, which is how they've translated fitna, in Muslim societies. Rampant declarations of apostasy, brackets kafir, and the improper issuing of fatwas. The Almighty strongly warns us against making declarations of apostasy, that is, issuing a legal ruling declaring a person or a group as infidels. The Quran says, do not say to one who offers you peace, you're not a believer, seeking the spoils of this world. Numerous, rigorously authenticated hadiths strongly warn and condemn those who declare others as apostates. Al-Bukhari and Ahmed both narrate, whoever accuses a believer of disbelief, then it is as if he killed himself. Whoever accuses a believer of disbelief, then it is as if he killed him. Whoever calls his brother a disbeliever, then it will have settled upon one of them. The grave consequences of apostasy include the legalization of taking lives and wealth, the dissolution of marriages, and the prohibition of inheritance, funeral prayers, or burial in Muslim cemeteries. So, this is the thing. If one person calls another person a kafir, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in these authenticated hadiths, that one of them definitely is. If it's not the person who is being called a kafir, if they're not a kafir, and they might even be a badly practicing Muslim, but still a Muslim. If they're not a kafir, the Prophet is saying that the person who's calling them a kafir is a kafir. But one of them definitely is. And the reason the Prophet Muhammad issued this, and you can check, it's in numerous authenticated hadiths, including in Al-Bukhari. The reason the Prophet Muhammad said this is because it is very dangerous and it creates a lot of fractures within society. So, we need to ensure that we avoid this. And that's why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, highlighted this issue and warn people not to do it. And the interesting thing is the verse of the Quran here that Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah has highlighted. Do not say to one who offers you peace, i.e. one who says salam, you are not a believer. And then the next bit, seeking the spoils of this world. Is this from jealousy? Is this from being, jealousy? Or, you want what that person wants. You envy it. Is that where it's from? And if it wasn't that, why would you even bother? Just leave the matter to Allah, whether a person is a believer or not. And whether a person is a believer or not doesn't mean whether you can live with them or do business with them or whatever. Throughout all Muslim societies, Muslims have always had neighbors who were not Muslims. And in the great times when Muslim society was riding high and was, really inspirational to so many people, and there was a few different periods of this. One of them was in Spain. Another one was, in Baghdad when the House of Knowledge was built, and during that early caliphate time. Another time was during the Ottoman period. There's been a few times, actually. There's also been the situation in Indonesia and how their Muslim society has developed. In all of these places, Muslims were living with people who weren't Muslims, people who were Jews or Christians or Hindus. And in those situations, everybody was living fine with each other. Why? Because there was respect. People were not going around pointing out, you are kafir, you are kafir, you are kafir. This is outrageous. And this is a huge problem today, which is why the Sheikh is highlighting it here. Scores of scholars have strongly warned against declarations of apostasy because of the severity of the consequences. Imam al-Subki said, as long as a person believes and declares that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad, God's peace and blessings upon him, is the messenger of God, then it is highly dubious to declare one as an apostate. Imam Abul Hamid al-Ghazali went so far as to prohibit declarations of apostasy on all groups when he said, these issues require independent reasoning and diligence, which means avoiding declarations of apostasy wherever possible, for it is wrong to legalize the seizure of life and property of those who pray towards the Qibla and believe in the oneness of God. In Jami al-Fusulain, Imam at-Tahawi says, a man does not reject his whatever is firmly established as such, and whatever is established by doubt cannot be judged as such. Firmly established faith cannot be cast out by doubt. A scholar should approach these issues with great care and not be quick to judge one an apostate, even to the extent of affirming a person's faith who has been forced into it. In other words, obviously, if a person's been forced to embrace Islam, that faith is most likely not sincere unless somehow it's took root in their hearts by some miracle. Because if you're forced into something, you're not likely to fall in love with it. But here, Sheikh at-Tahawi is saying, just check that, yes, Sheikh Imam at-Tahawi is saying that even in that situation, you should defend their faith. Even in that situation. Why? Because the consequences of denying the person's faith would mean that a lot of injustice is done. And Islam is a religion of justice. It's not a religion of injustice. Ibn Mazah states in his Al-Fatwa al-Sughra, apostasy is a very grave matter. So I will not declare a believer an apostate if there is any account attesting otherwise. Al-Ghazali writes in Al-Qulasha, if some factors require declaring apostasy and only one factor prohibits it, then the Mufti must lean towards the factor of prohibition in order to always assume the best about a Muslim. So if there's a lot of things which indicate that a person is an apostate or kafir, but there is one thing that indicates they may be a believer, or put some doubt in those other things. Imam al-Ghazali is saying that you must still lean in favor, the mufti, because it shouldn't be just anybody, it should be a mufti, it should be someone with authority, must lean towards assuming they are a Muslim, even if they are not a very good practicing Muslim. The author of Al-Fatawa, a Bazaziyah, Al-Qadari, writes, mitigating assumptions are possible so long as the person does not openly declare themselves to be an apostate. Ibn al-Ala states in Al-Fatawa al-Tataqaniyah, a person may not be excommunicated on the basis of likelihood and probability, for as if apostasy is a crime, the punishment for which is final, it must also be final and beyond any doubt that a person has perpetuated the crime, and there is no finality in mere probability. Shaykh Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah states in his book of Fatwas, the companions and the various Imams of Islam have agreed that not all who speak sinfully may be declared apostates, even if what they speak is against the Sunnah. For declaring every sinner an apostate is the opposite of binding consensus. It's the opposite of ijma. However, there has been disagreement on the issue of apostasy, which has been discussed elsewhere. Denominations following a certain sheikh or imam may not declare those who do not follow them to be apostates. For the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, said, whoever says to his brother, disbeliever, then it will have settled upon one of them. So even here, Sheikh or Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is also saying the same thing. And just because a person is speaking sinfully or acting sinfully, because everybody sins, everyone. If you think you don't sin, examine yourself. If you think you don't sin, examine yourself before you point the finger at other people. Because when you point, remember there's three pointing back at you. Everyone sins. Everyone at some point has said something sinful as well. And will likely do so again, no matter how hard we try, because we are human. We are by nature weak, as Allah says in the Holy Quran. That doesn't mean we don't try to do our best. That doesn't mean we don't strive. Of course, we should. This is what Islam teaches us. But the reality is, even when we try our hardest, we will sin. And we will at times say something wrong, which is speaking sinfully. And I'm saying this as much for myself as for anybody else. It's to be human. If we were not like that, we would be malaika. We would be angels. And we are not angels. That's why we're here on this earth. And Ibn Taymiyyah here is saying, just because a person speaks sinfully, it doesn't mean that you can declare them kafir. It doesn't mean you can say they're an apostate. In the Musnad of Al-Bazar, Iyad al-Ansari narrates that the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, said, the declaration that there is no God but God is precious to God. For he who declares it truthfully is rewarded with paradise by God. And he who says it with deceit suffers with his life and wealth and then meets God to face its judgment. In other words, whoever says La ilaha illallah is between them and Allah. Between them and Allah. Allah knows if they are truthful in what they say, in which case Allah is happy with them and it is sacred. It is a sacred trust between them and Allah. And if, on the other hand, they say it deceitfully, Allah will question them one day, and it is for Allah to decide. It's not for us. We must be extremely cautious about declarations of apostasy, especially those that are mutual, because these declarations invite evil by legalizing killing and dispossession. These declarations invite evil. So in the name of, what's the people trying to achieve by going around saying these people are kafir, those people are kafir? Because Shaykh bin Bayyah says here, when you go down that road, it invites evil. People do things which are evil. So you have to be very careful when you're inviting evil into any situation. Islam is calling towards the good and forbidding the evil. Sound hadiths use the scriptures to describe a united society in Islam. According to one hadith, the similitude of believers in regards to mutual love, affection, and empathy is that of one body. When any limb of it aches, the whole body aches because of sleeplessness and fever. Another hadith states, a believer to another believer is like a building whose different parts enforce each other. While saying that, the Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, clasped his hands by interlacing his fingers. Where declarations of apostasy are prevalent, society will deteriorate or collapse. So where it becomes commonplace for people to declare each other as apostates, as kafir, to make takbir, no, not takbir, takbir is good, to make takfir, society will deteriorate or collapse. And what do we see? Where people may have a habit of making takfir, where people are declaring other people as kafir, those societies start to have an awful lot of problems. People end up getting killed. It is no small matter. We are warned against declarations of apostasy because all souls are safeguarded. All souls are safeguarded. And no individual has the right to attack them. Actions that appear to contradict this truth apply only to cases of crime and self-defense, and apply equally to Muslims and non-Muslims. The issue of fatwa in the age of tribulation. The Arabic word fatwa means clarifying the law, i.e. the Sharia, based on evidence to those who ask. Al-Qarafi said, it is the communication of God's will, for a mufti is a translator. Al-Zakak defined it as an explanation of a legal ruling by one who is known to possess the required knowledge, with its importance equal to that of the ruling. Because they carry the Prophet's duty, God's peace and blessings upon him, to clarify God's will, those who issue fatwas hold a powerful and important position in Islam. Those who issue them with sound knowledge and authority deserve great honor and reward. But those who issue fatwas without these prerequisites are a grave danger to Muslim society. The Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, warned us about this in a hadith narrated by Ad-Darimi on the authority of Abdullah ibn Jafar. Those who issue fatwas with ease also approach hellfire with ease. Those who issue fatwas with ease approach Jahannam with ease. Due to the grave dangers of issuing fatwas, scholars have established a guarantee, i.e., on wealth and health, for the non-mujtahid who has been placed in the position of a mufti. Al-Zuqani said in his commentary on Khalil, no guarantee is extended to a qualified mujtahid, i.e., wealth and life that is lost in others due to his fatwas, if it is expended due to his trade of issuing fatwas. But there is a guarantee for another, i.e., an unqualified person. Nonetheless, there are two opinions regarding this matter. The ruler should castigate the non-mujtahid, and it is the ruler's right to do so, except if the ruler has offered him another position, in which case the non-mujtahid should not be castigated and should simply cease to issue fatwas. Abu al-Faraj ibn al-Juzi, may Allah have mercy on his soul, said, the ruler must ban them, i.e. the issuers of fatwas, as Bani Umayyah did, for they are worse than a when he knows not the way, or a blind person who points to the Qibla, or a person who acts as a doctor when he knows nothing of medicine. Just as a ruler bans those who are ignorant of medicine from treating people, we must also ban those who are ignorant of the Quran and the Sunnah and did not study sacred law on issuing fatwas. Understanding the contextual reality in which prior legal rulings exist is critical, as Ibn Qayyim argues, so that those historical rulings can be effectively applied to contemporary realities. In order to achieve our objectives, we must understand the present era as the ground on which we stand. This is such a vital couple of lines here. Understanding this contextual reality in which prior rulings exist. Understand the circumstances, the history, the reasoning of why previous fatwas in historical times were issued. You cannot apply, without any kind of checking and contextualization, a fatwa from 100 years ago or 200 years ago, or especially 1,000 years ago, to a modern situation, which is probably in so many respects quite different from the situation in which that fatwa was initially issued. This is what Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah is saying here. He said also, in order to achieve this, we must understand that the present era is the ground on which we stand. We do not live 1400 years ago. It should be obvious. But it's some people, they're trying to live and apply things from over 1,000 years ago to modern times. We are not living over 1,000 years ago. We're not living 500 years ago. We are living now, and we need to apply things which apply now. Now, that doesn't mean we don't look at the old fatwa. Those should be studied by scholars, and also modern knowledge and modern circumstances be studied and analyzed by scholars, so that we can come to a good understanding of both Islam, how it's supposed to be understood, Islam, how it was applied historically, and Islam, how it should be applied in modern circumstance. Only when we do this are we going to come to judge. Only when we come to this are we going to come to judgments which are effective and useful and relevant for the current times. Each historical moment includes its own benefits to be acquired and evils to be avoided, and these factors must always be taken into consideration in seeking the greater good, as encouraged by the Sharia. And yes, there is a mechanism in Sharia for this. This is not something that modernists have made up. It's certainly not something that I've made up. And it's certainly not something that Shaykh Abdallah bin Bayyah has made up, who is a classical scholar of Islam. Ignoring this context through negligence or ill will leads to grave consequences, including contradicting and undermining the original purpose of the Sharia to ease hardship on mankind, while conforming to the requirements of deduction and reasoning. So, the Sheikh also gives a good point here. The purpose of the Sharia is to ease hardship on mankind. It's to resolve problems and make our lives easier. It's not something that's there to be a big problem for us or to create more further problems or tribulations. It's to resolve problems, as indeed any legal system. Fatwas may fall into three categories. 1. Issues, such as prayer and fasting, that are known to most Muslims because they are the foundations of this religion. 2. Modern, complex issues, such as those related to financial transactions and corporate structures. Rulings on these issues are left to specialized committees. So if it is something which is concerning a particularly modern situation, you need specialists. Specialists who are in Islamic scholarship in regards to Sharia, and specialists in regard to understanding the particular topics which they are discussing. And they have committees. Those committees will meet, they will discuss, and then they will arrive at conclusions. And from those conclusions, they will draw up a fatwa which is suitable for the situation in which people find themselves today. And 3, issues related to communal obligations, fard al-kifaya, especially those which scholars consider the responsibility of rulers, such as jihad, war, and peace, and systems of government. Grave risk of damage and disruption of peace. Rulings on these issues can be made only by organizations of fiqh or official authorities entrusted by the states. See Abdullah bin Bayyah, The Craft of Issuing Fatwas, and Minority Fiqh. In response to conflict and the prevalence of bloodshed in the Muslim community, we have attempted to define and understand peace and its related circumstances. We have defined peace as a peace of mind and soul, peace in words and actions, and peace in the home and in the community. Peace is when souls bear no malice, evil words are not spoken, and hands bear no weapons. It is tranquility, harmony, and love. The communal obligation, fard al-kifaya, of scholars and religious authorities is to make peace and call for reconciliation. We choose to focus on how to establish peace rather than fixating on why conflicts exist. Bringing peace into our societies now is our most priority. Like a firefighter, extinguish the blaze instead of asking who. We must first extinguish the flames of war before we can accomplish our goals. Such wisdom in these lines. Focus on establishing peace. You do not get peace by playing a blame game. That's what Shaykh bin Bayyah is saying here. Saying, you started it. Well, then as soon as you do that, the other side is going to say, you started it. Whoever started it, they're both going to argue the same thing. The flames get hotter. The flames don't stop. They burn even more. They destroy even more. I mean, we've seen this right now on the ground in Gaza. And in October last year, we saw also what happened in Israel. Similarly, we see the same thing in Ukraine and other places around the world. We're not going to make those places more peaceful by saying who started it. We have to first stop the fire. When you stop the fire, then you can figure out how it started. But you can't do that while the fire is going on. We invite scholars everywhere to join us in this effort. We are not here as judges or jurors. We are here simply to call for peace and to urge others to do the same. For we believe that both religious and rational points of view indicate that peace is our ultimate objective. Peace is a right that precedes all other inalienable, alleged, and individual and collective rights. For each assertion made, we sought proof in the Quran, the Sunnah, the biography of the Prophet, ﷺ, the actions of his family, and of the caliphs after him, and the words of the Imams. We began by showing the centrality of peace in Islam. Salam, peace, is one of the names of the Almighty, his chosen greeting, the name of his paradise, and his command to his worshippers. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the other concessions made for the sake of peace and avoiding bloodshed demonstrate that peace presents opportunities for religious and worldly benefits that far outweigh those presented by war, which leads only to destruction. We can also learn from Al-Hassan, who relinquished his rights as a ruler in order to make peace between two Muslim factions. His noble example demonstrates that the benefits of relinquishing a right may be greater than the benefits of fighting to preserve them. Islam brought treaties to Arab tribes that had previously lived in a state of perpetual war. One example is the story of Taglib and Bakr, both sons of Wa'il, who fought between themselves for 40 years. They drank from a cup that ran bitter in their mouths, the honest and dishonest amongst them killing each other. Throughout history, Muslims made treaties and agreements to avert war. Islam established internal peace through the Constitution of Medina and external peace by signing more than 1,000 treaties and agreements with Europe throughout the Middle Ages. Islam also abolished the practice of blood vengeance from pre-Islamic times and established that only rulers have the right to seek revenge or proclaim jihad. Islam also established social morals such as honoring parents, obeying adults and rulers, ensuring justice for the ruled, and providing proper education to children. Rather than enforcing subservience or humiliation, these behaviors dignify human relationships and contribute to social cohesion. We do not subscribe to Hegel's belief that conflict is the driving force in society, that a constant struggle for control is inevitable, and that destruction is a prerequisite for construction. As Ricoeur argues, Hegel's intellectual framework shaped modern Europe, explaining why antagonism is the basis of European relationships. Women and men are pitted against one another. Transgendered persons are against both of them. Workers are against their employers, and the struggle permeates all relationships. It is also worth mentioning that Marx was essentially Hegelian, and that Hegel's idea of the other contributed to the raging of wars in Europe. A lot of people don't realize this, but the underlying society of a civilization, such as European civilizations, it directly impacts very much in the real world. When those ideas are widely adopted, even if people do not consciously realize they've adopted those ideas, even if they're subconscious, but those ideas are there nonetheless, and we see them acted out in practice. Islamic values and the fiqh of peace are based on reconciliation and forgiveness, not antagonism. The original purpose of the Sharia was to serve peace, but ignorant and distorted interpretations of the Sharia are now used to serve violence. Also, Sharia rulings belong to specific historical and societal contexts, which must be taken into consideration. Historical rulings to modern. In other words, a historical applies to a particular time and place, modern situation. And in essence, you still have to draw up a new fatwa based upon the old one. Through the Prophet of Mercy, Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, Islam provided an infrastructure for the protection of peace and the promotion of these concepts, which were a sign of God's mercy, have been misinterpreted and now manifest in forms that radically contradicts their original meaning and thus undermine their original purpose. Mercy has been replaced with great suffering that afflicts the guilty as well as the innocent, and the learned as well as the ignorant. In Muslim societies, concepts which have been distorted include jihad, Sharia, enjoining good and forbidding evil, and allegiance and disavowal. Declarations of apostasy and misinformed fatwas are the worst of all evils that undermine Muslim society today. In conclusion, we offer the following. 1. Conflicts that invoke religion may be caused by cultural, political, or economic factors. They may exist between different religious denominations or even between people of the same religious denomination who have different interpretations of their faith and different stances on modernity. 2. Religions sometimes fuel secular or political conflicts. 3. The Muslim community is torn between a call for modernity that rationalizes moral decline and rejects traditional teachings, and an equally misinformed religious call that, under the guise of faith, declares apostasy, proclaims jihad, and applies Sharia punishments without the requisite knowledge and understanding, thereby undermining Islam. 4. We must recognize that the Hegelian model of antagonism and continuous struggle does not reflect Islam nor suit Muslim societies. We must seek to establish peace so that our communities can benefit from a more humane and less destructive approach. 5. We must also recognize that a society without any established common ground cannot transition to a democracy without seeking mutual compromises that would appease everyone. Exclusion under any pretext will only lead to conflict and hatred and will result in great and unacceptable suffering. 6. It is unacceptable and incomprehensible for our Muslim community's current catastrophic conditions to remain as they are, for the grave consequences may be of an evil unknown except by he who manifests all the mysteries in the heavens. 7. Peace and love are at the center of our religion, as evidenced by scripture and history. 8. Secular or religious civil war is unacceptable in Islam under any conditions. The Prophet, God's peace and blessings upon him, warned, "Do not revert to disbelief after me by striking, i.e. cutting, the necks of one another." 9. Our religion and our heritage are rich with tools for resolving conflicts, so we have no need to resort to violence. 10. Our heritage includes one of the richest legal and ethical systems humanity has ever seen. Its approach to reconciliation includes discussion, compromise based on guarantees, and all the necessary tools for condemnation or exoneration. The system is capable of addressing every form of individual and collective conflict, from marital disputes to international war. 11. It is not acceptable to achieve goodwill or noble intentions through hatred and warfare. A noble objective must be achieved only by noble means and may never be used as an excuse for evil actions. 12. The fiqh of peace does not seek to deny rights, but rather to achieve them by more rational and beneficial means. If the energies our society spent in conflict and war had instead been devoted to a more rational pursuit of peace, in the spirit of repelling evil with that which is best, we would have achieved mutually satisfactory results that might have satisfied God, the Almighty and Exalted, by preventing bloodshed, protecting lives and souls, and bringing hearts closer together. The individual and collective opportunities created by peace are far greater than the spoils of war, which is usually counterproductive. Those who fight to eliminate corruption usually worsen it, and wars often lead to the loss of all rights when the citizens who survive find themselves surrounded by destruction. Without a home or a nation, perhaps even after losing the hereafter, in addition to this world, we seek refuge in God from such a loss. I hope you found that interesting, and it certainly should be something that you find useful. And these talks, as you know, I upload on my YouTube and my Instagram, and they stay there. So, watch it again, rewind it. If you can manage to get hold of this book, then read it for yourself and study it. Understand these things. If we understand our Islam better, then we will resolve many of these problems. There is no reason for us to be in such a big mess. May Allah make things easier for all of you, and I hope you all have a good evening and a wonderful weekend. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you all.